Been a while and we shouldn't have left you, but the pressure is rising. And I'm sure you know that the stakes are getting higher as the time has come for the NBA's final four teams left to battle it out in the East and West, respectively, for a spot in this year's finals in the conference final round. What's going on, everyone? My name is Gabriel Wilkins, and I'm joined as usual beside my partner in crime, who has been active and on the scene at the NBA Draft Combine here in the Whitney City and goes by the name of Josh Hicks. What's going on, bro?
What's happening, man? Glad to be on the mic with you as always. And always great to talk basketball, man. We got a lot to talk about.
For sure, especially after what happened this weekend out in Beantown. And in this week's edition of Open Run, me and Josh will take a moment to discuss the top storylines to watch out for over the course of the 2023 WNBA season, set to tip off this Friday evening. The ever-changing NBA head coaching carousel on top of the final three games in the epic series that went down between the Sixers and Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinal round that concluded over this past weekend, prior to getting into a discussion on the top things to watch out for in both the Eastern and Western Conference final series. However, before we get into the following topics, let's pay kudos and respect to a few magnificent milestones and grand feats that took place across the game of basketball over the past week and beyond in our hoop shout out segment. Special hoop shout outs this week go out to the WNBA, Chicago Sky, and the Minnesota Lynx, who went toe-to-toe against one another in their preseason finale in front of a sold-out crowd at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto to mark the league's first ever visit north of the border, as Kalia Copper poured in 18 points to go along with 9 boards beside rookie guard Kayana Traylor's 13 points to guide the Sky to an 8-point win against the Lynx in Canada, in addition to New York Knicks guard Jalen Brunson, who became just the 6th player in the history of the storied franchise to record at least 4 or more 30-plus point games in a single postseason, joining the great Walt Frazier, Bernard King, Patrick Ewing, Carmelo Anthony, and the late Willis Reed in that exclusive club. And last but not least, Denver Nuggets all-star center Nikola Jokic, who became just the 5th player in league history to reach 11 career triple-doubles in the playoffs, as only Magic Johnson, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook currently have more than Jokic, who is currently tied for 5th in the all-time category for playoff triple-doubles with Hall of Fame point guard and current Mavs head coach Jason Kidd. And happy birthday wishes also go out to the man known to many as the Worm and Dennis Rodman, who turned 62 this past weekend. So after taking some time to show love to some of the game's greats, past and present, across the basketball world and landmark feats to take place, what are some things across the game, or be it the NBA playoffs, Josh, that's impressed you the most over the last week as we record this at the top of yet another week?
Jalen Brunson, man. Jalen Brunson dropping 41 in a eliminating game series that unfortunately sent him home. But it's the way that he balled out and battled, man. Jalen Brunson's a competitor, a heck of a fierce force offensively that's very underrated and underestimated. And he showed that he has multiple tools in his toolkit, being able to score effortlessly the way that he did inside and outside of the paint around the perimeter, and also being able to pretty much run that whole offense because Julius Randle was non-existent that whole game. I hate that the Knicks had to go out that way because of the fact that, it just revealed the state that they're not where they should be or they can be at this present moment. But it showed that Jalen Brunson move was the best move they could ever make. And the fact that they have a solid point guard now, it opens up the door for them to do that much more to revamp this roster that they have, to take them to the next level. And Jalen Brunson being the forefront of that is the way that it should go. And it's proven in that game that's just the direction that they need to go. So shout out to Jalen Brunson, Illinois repping, making people giving people a reason to have some side of hope over there in New York City, man, down there in Manhattan. It's a very special thing to see.
Oh, absolutely. And who would have ever thought that it would all come full circle this fast for him? Remember, all summer last year, a lot of people laughed at the Knicks for giving out that big money to Jalen Brunson. And they said, how could you do that? Leon Rose is a fool, etc. Why you didn't get Donovan Mitchell? Well, seems like he made the right decision. Instead of giving up all of his depth and key cogs in the rotation, such as a Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickly, who was in the running for Sixth Man of the Year, he decided to stay pat, and he got that point guard that they desperately needed that you talked about. And if it was not for Jalen Brunson, I don't think the New York Knicks have a top 5 offense in the league during the regular season. I don't think the New York Knicks find a way to not only make it to the playoffs, but eliminate the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games, a team that I thought on paper was much better than the Knicks. However, proved to be a matchup nightmare for them. It's guys from the likes of Mitchell Robinson stepped up mightily on the glass, made Jared Allen look small, which is hard to do, who's one of the most fearsome defenders in the league when it comes to protecting the rim. Has been a solid rebounder for most of his career. Ate him alive on the glass. Evan Mobley as well, although that was his first playoff experience. But I like where the Knicks are going. I don't think that they failed. I think that they overachieved. And I think they can parlay this run that they went on into a few more runs rather, in the years to come as they continue to accumulate and build talent. And they still got some pieces on that team when the time is right that they can seek the flip for that ultimate star to come there. Because you never know in this NBA universe how quickly things can change within the blink of an eye. So I like the way that Leon Rose is building it, as well as Wesley, Worldwide West, William Wesley. I love the way that they build things over there, and I think they're going to keep it going. But for me, the things that stood out for me is these WNBA roster cuts, man. Like you got guards like Alexis Morris out of LSU getting cut by the Sun within hours of playing in a preseason game against the Liberty, less than a month after getting drafted by Connecticut in the second round of the draft, fresh off a national championship in Baton Rouge under Kim Mulkey. And then you consider the fact that you had the former number 4 overall pick from a year ago, Emily Ainsler, getting cut by the Fever a few weeks ago before the start of training camp, making her the 4th lottery pick since 2019 that the Fever's front office has either waived, traded, or released. Now, she was later picked up by the Mystics, agreeing to a training camp deal. But as we know, there's no guarantees that come with that spot on the roster. And you know that your spots on a WNBA roster, not saying that it's not an NBA, but it's truly earned. It's not given at all when you're in that type of spot. And last year, only 17 of the 36 picks from the 2022 WNBA draft made opening day rosters. I find that so interesting because it just goes to show you how you could be on top one moment of your respective profession, and then within the blink of an eye, less than like a month after you just was cutting down the nets out in Dallas, you trying to find a job either in the league or somewhere overseas. And we're going to get into this a little bit later in our WNBA segment when we have a conversation on it. But like, you hear some people talk about expansion and whatnot, and I get it. There's definitely a need for it. But it just goes to show you how this is truly a cutthroat business anytime you got draft picks, especially draft picks that the organization was tweeting to their fans about less than several weeks ago. Now, all of a sudden, nowhere on the roster. And then last but not least, the unfortunate situation that's transpired once again with Ja Morant. I know that the league is going to come down very hard on him. I do. I hope that it's not as hard as they did on Gilbert Arenas. And the reason why I say that is because the NBA in some ways is to blame for it. And I tell you why. We talk about how we want to make the league younger. And I get that. But situations such as that go to show just how important veteran leadership is in a locker room. You look at the average age of the Memphis Grizzlies. you don't have too many veterans in that locker room outside of Steven Adams. And Steven Adams is around my age. So that's not really too much experience. Maybe in NBA locker rooms that is, because he's the elder statesman, if you will, in that locker room. But you got to find a way to get some vets in this league. It's a lot of guys who may not be able to contribute on the floor the way that they once did, but can still be serviceable enough in a locker room to talk with these young guys and school them, not just in the game of basketball, but in life. I know a lot of people want to blame Ja's father, T, for some of the issues. I get that. It's a myriad of factors you could point to. I'm not going to do that because we all make mistakes, but man, it just goes to show you how it can all be taken away from you in an instant. And even though Ja has made some self-inflicted errors that's cost him mightily, the league is to blame for some of this as well. Because I truly believe that if Ja Morant was playing in David Stern's league, he would have got the memo the first time, not the second.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah, for sure, the league does have its own, way of involvement in this. Especially when you talk about, like you said, you want the league to be younger, and you're letting, kids per se, quote unquote, grow up in an environment that they're not accustomed to yet.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely takes a while to adjust. When life moves at you that fast. But man, I can't help but sit here and think how bad Ja Morant is not making himself look bad, but people that supported him look bad. Because when I think about how he went on an ESPN interview with Jalen Rose, someone that really vouched for him, to say, yo, I'm giving you a platform to talk about your truth and how you're going to change yourself. And then less than a few months after you get kicked out, less than that, and after you get kicked out of the playoffs, you're doing the same stuff again and letting it be known that you're doing it. These people are filming you. These people are recording you. And you still let the stuff go. I just hate that, even though, yes, a large portion or a nice size portion goes to the league for this. A nice size portion goes to the Memphis Grizzlies per se for not providing the guidance in that locker room that's needed. But man, Ja, come on. How many chances can we give you? Like, how many chances can we give you that allows you to have excuse after excuse after excuse to make up for behavior that you clearly have put out there and shown that you're not really wanting to change it? It's not like, now we don't know what else is going on. It could be any type of other addictions, whatever the case may be, that could be going on that could lead to some of this. But if there isn't, whatever this thing that's bothering him is clearly more than just a couple days in rehab. It's a couple days in a mental health facility. Like, this is something that needs to be treated continuously. And the league has to put some type of protocol in there that says, hey, if you really are going through this, they need to boost some I don't know if they got to boost some type of presence or whatever the case may be. But not only does the league have to put the memo out there that this is not acceptable and you don't get as many chances as you think you can get, but somebody gotta put the memo to Ja and be like, yo, bro, you're about to lose hundreds of millions of dollars over trying to fit in a situation in life that either leads you to two places: jail or dead to the grave.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's the constant statistic and stereotype within the Black community. So it's more than, so this is bigger than basketball for guys like us. It's bigger than basketball because we're not dealing with just a superstar. We're dealing with a young kid who is a Black male.
Yep.
That fits the stereotype, unfortunately, of where people of his age go. And to make it worse, or not worse, but to make the situation worse, he is a father of a beautiful baby girl. You cannot let your kids see this on a consistent basis and expect nothing to be phased by this. Like, if John doesn't get it together, his baby girl is going to have to deal with some of the setbacks of this, and it may or may not be good. So it's so many layers to that situation, man. And I agree with you as far as where part of the blame goes. But as men and Black males specifically, we got to hold accountable in areas that, quite frankly, it's out of our control. But his camp, whoever is in that circle, they got to change this real quick, because he's going down a dangerous path that, quite frankly, if he doesn't get it together, he may not get himself out of. And that's unfortunate for young Black males in America, because that's always what because he's living out a statistic that doesn't have to be him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna say this too. Put the cameras down. I understand it's your right to carry a gun, Second Amendment, all of that. Even in the state of Tennessee, I believe you had a right to conceal carry and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But put the camera down. I don't mind you having a gun, but put the camera down. Why are we toting guns on Instagram Live? I know people that's been in that life. I'm not proud to say that, but I do. They never taught me to front my moves in public, whether I was doing right or doing wrong. There comes a point in time where everything that we do in this life don't always have to be documented. Whatever happened to privacy. And if you can't change the activities of people around you, then you need to change the people around you. And I think that's what needs to happen. And you're right. You talk about how his actions can impact the life of his daughter. You talk about generations after he long gone. And we not just talk about hundreds of millions with the max deal in Memphis. We talk about a signature shoe deal with Nike. Mm-hmm. It's so much on the table. It's so much on the table. And I've seen far worse, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, and this needs to be a message to everybody, not just Ja Morant. And we said this before when we talked about the first time. Put the damn cameras down, please. Like, that activity ain't meant for cameras. I remember Jay-Z said on one of his songs, he said, when I was talking Instagram, he said, last thing you wanted was your picture snap. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of people understand what the hell he meant when he said that. This the type of shit he talking about, y'all.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And there's some more maturing that needs to take place, clearly. And he has to do it in such a way now where not just his bottom line is taken care of, but more importantly, his family. That got to be taken care of as well. And you can't do that when you're throwing guns up there. That's just the reality. No matter that, and especially when you put it on Instagram Live, it's not gonna make that any better
at all.
And he has to learn and grow from that. And we would like for it to come from his father, because that's his father and he's around and he's present. And that's a vital component to a young Black man's life. So we would want that to come from his father. But if it ain't gonna come from his father, he got to have somebody in that circle that's gonna put him in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, his daddy's signature's not on them checks. That's his, and that could be swiped away real easy if he keeps going in the path that he's going to. I wish he had guys like Gil to talk to, or guys like Allen Iverson, guys that have been in those realms that, maybe not drug related, but there's some gang banging and some guns that's been taking place that altered the direction of their careers at some point.
Hey, I almost lost it all. Everybody knows about the bowling alley incident in Virginia. That's how he wasn't able to get his college football scholarship. Kevin Garnett done been through stuff. I done had personal conversations with Kevin Garnett when I was little, when my uncle used to work for N1. It was a rep beside him, so I know KG's story. It's a lot of OGs that could talk to him, a lot of them. But the question is, will you listen? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to learn? Jalen Rose is one of those guys, and I think that's why he took the chance. But we had this conversation when he came back. Did he come back too soon? And I remember you said maybe he did, because there's so many bigger things that he needs to focus on other than basketball. And for a guy that went up in front of the media in the wake of their first round exit to the Lakers, that openly stated, I have to be more mature. I have to be better when it comes to how I handle things. And due to my actions, this is why we are where we are, basically. Paraphrase what he said. Come on, man. I understand you love NBA Youngboy. I love NBA Youngboy too. I love rap music. But for those that want to blame the culture of rap as to why this is happening, I get it. At some point, we got to have a mind of our own. We got to have a mind of our own. And I hope that Ja finds some people who have a mind of their own for the better, not only of him, but his family moving forward. But I want to move away from that situation and the top storylines that stood out to us the most over the last week to talk about this upcoming WNBA season. According to PointsBet, the Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty, to no one's surprise, are considered to be the teams with the two highest odds of taking home the WNBA championship in 2023, with the Aces at plus 125 and Liberty at plus 150. A week prior to the season tipping off this coming Friday, the Washington Mystics are listed at plus 1,200 odds, while the hometown Chicago Sky, who look to maintain success without Candace Parker and their longtime star point guard Courtney Vandersloot, come in at plus 2,800. Most people this season, Josh, due to the arrival of Jonquel Jones, Breonna Stewart, and Courtney Vandersloot, besides Sabrina Ionescu in New York, combined with Candace Parker's decision to pair with the likes of Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Kelsey Plum in Las Vegas, are of the belief that we will witness a matchup in the WNBA finals between the Liberty and Aces. However, when it comes to the WNBA, which top storyline or happenings are you looking forward to watching the most outside of those markets such as New York or Las Vegas, or even Chicago here, where so many questions lie as to what the future holds for the Sky under James Wade?
Man, I think there's two. Okay. One for me is the Washington Mystics and how they're going to evolve.
I'm glad you brought them up,
because they look nasty. They look real nasty right now. And you got Atlanta Deladon that really runs the show over there. Outside of those, obviously the New York Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces, Mystics have a real hard third option for that championship. And they have the veteran leadership and what it takes, along with the skill set to do it. So I know for sure the Washington Mystics is a team I'm going to watch. But another one might surprise you a little bit. Maybe not, but we'll see. I want to see what the Seattle Storm going to do. Because this is your first real season without Breonna Stewart and Sue Bird.
Yeah.
You're starting a whole new era. But you still got Jewel Lloyd over there. You still got some pieces that can work. And I want to see how deep of a fall off are they going to really have this year. And last time I looked at the power rankings, I want to say they still had Seattle in near the top 10. Which to me, I think based on the playoff breakdown, they have a chance to potentially earn one of those final spots in the playoffs. So for them to go to the playoffs a year, potentially, after losing Breonna Stewart and Sue Bird, with Sue Bird being the real matriarch of that entire franchise. That's not bad. Especially if you're not guaranteed to win it, but you still make the playoffs. That's not bad. And I think this is going to be a big year for Jewel Lloyd as now being one of the main leaders of this franchise without Breanna Stewart, and the new direction without Breanna Stewart and Sue Bird. I want to see how those two teams fare out in the WNBA. It's going to be very interesting to see.
I'm glad you brought up the Seattle Storm. According to PointsBet, their odds are plus 2,500 to win the WNBA championship in 2023. I'm very curious to see how Jewel Lloyd is able to step in as Seattle's next face of the franchise, because she's taken that role by default. And you talk about losing Breanna Stewart, which is a huge loss, but also Sue Bird, who was the point guard there for nearly 2 decades. I'm very curious. I'm very curious, because if I'm not mistaken, Sue Bird captured 4 WNBA titles in her career, and it's gonna be interesting to watch. But I'm curious to see the Mystics too, and their aspirations that they have to play at a much faster pace under their new head coach and Eric Thibault. So like his dad was there for many years, Mike, and now he's the general manager. He's passed it off to his son, and they say they want to play at a faster pace, similar to the way that they got up and down the floor in 2019. And they want to utilize their defense more to do that and try to gain more live ball turnovers, something that they said that they had trouble doing last season, even though they were the top ranked defensive team across a multitude of metrics last year. And I think somebody that's going to help them do that is Brittany Sykes, who was playing with the LA Sparks. You have her as one of the league leaders in steals for the last 2 years and running. She's one of the best ISO defenders in the game, and she could generate turnovers off the ball. She's very active with her hands, aggressive when the open face ball is put in front of her. I think it's going to create a lot of havoc for opponents in the backcourt that got to deal with her on top of Ariel Atkins and then Natasha Cloud.
Yeah,
man, like I really like what they build. And then you got Elena Delle Donne, who, if she could just stay healthy, and we know that she's dealt with a myriad of health issues throughout the course of her career, but if she can stay healthy, this offense is going to be fine. And then you got Christy Tolliver coming back into the mix as well, even though she's a little older. I want to see how this team is going to do, because I think this is the team that everybody is forgetting about. Everybody's so quick to talk about the Liberty and the Aces, and rightfully so. I want to see those two teams perform right away. But the Mystics, they're going to be right there.
Oh yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic now with the spread of these roster makeups. And you talk about Brittany Sykes, but I'm glad you brought up Natasha Cloud, because Natasha Cloud brings that edge to them, that dog mentality, that aggressiveness, especially on the defensive end, that grit that sparks the transition game that the Mystics are looking for. That's something that, you know, they had, and they actually took advantage of a lot of the times in the playoffs last season before they got knocked out. But I believe it was the Seattle Storm that knocked them out. That was something that they can really take advantage of this year. And Christy Tolliver coming back off the bench, yeah, like you said, she's older, but she's still a sniper. She's a shooter. She's gonna get, since she knows how to put the ball in the basket. That could be coming, nice and handy when you are putting her in a backcourt with Elena Delle Donne in the closing minutes, which I do believe she will be out there for. So it's scary. This is going to be a very dynamic WNBA season in a lot of ways. That's really going to benefit the league for sure.
Yeah, as you alluded to, Seattle did put out Washington the first round, 2-0 in the best-of-3 series in the opening round. And yeah, they definitely going to be out for blood. But I want to get back into the topic that I brought up that stood out to me the most with these roster cuts. Because we talked about the Mystics and we talked about Natasha Cloud. She recently tweeted out that we need more teams in the WNBA. And she stated her displeasure with the league in regards to that over a week ago. Do you believe that expansion is truly the answer to helping fully solve the issue of limited roster spots across the WNBA? because there's only 12 teams as we currently sit here and record, which only makes room for 144 players at best. And as a result, you have so much talent that oftentimes does not get seen stateside by fans of women's professional basketball in the highest league in the world, being the WNBA.
I agree with her. I mean, the league definitely needs some expansion, but expansion needs bread. And they have not built the revenue enough to even expand in the way that it needs to expand. Because even though we're glad to have the conversation right now about how they can expand to 2 more teams ideally and within the league, great. But 2 more teams equals 24 players. You still got 140, like you said, potentially 144 more rosters that need to be created for this, and you need the revenue to get it done, and they just don't have that. They're still a young league, so because of that, rapid expansion is not going to be relevant at this present moment. However, what we are also seeing on the other hand is a rise of professional leagues that's being created, that's creating those opportunities for players that if they can't play a WNBA season, they can still potentially play at home and get something done. For the men, we always talk about the basketball tournament, TBT, the great option for that. But for women, you got overtime. For women, you have, different, I think there's another league too that Natasha Cloud and Lexi Brown and those girls played in. And it brought exposure to them playing in the West Coast. Those leagues help a little bit. It's not the full solution, but the more creation of those leagues and building those leagues that can expand more over time, and similarly to the WNBA, it can help a lot considering that, right now the roster spots for the WNBA are so thin.
Yeah, and I know the league you talk about. That's Athletes Unlimited.
Yes,
because that's really popped off lately, and they was able to get like a TV deal, I believe, with like Bally Sports, and they had their games broadcasted. And I watched a couple during the WNBA all season on nights when I wasn't checking out NBA basketball. You see a lot of WNBA players playing on those Athletes Unlimited squads, keeping their game sharp alongside of some top tier international talent and women that play overseas. I would love to see expansion. I think expansion is needed, but I don't think it's the answer to fully solving it. And I'm going to tell you why. Just to put it in perspective, you take the NBA, you have 450 players on total on 30 teams. For all of those guys, we can always talk about this, and we do this every year, Josh. We talk about a bunch of players. Why is such and such not in the league? I'll give you an example one, DeMarcus Cousins.
Yep.
I know DeMarcus Cousins can still be serviceable as a backup center in the league, or even as a spot up starter at the 5 spot for most teams, especially teams that are lottery bound, but no one wants to sign them for many reasons. And politics always plays a part in it. And when I say politics, for those that is not really hip with basketball, I'm not talking about necessarily where you lie when it comes to personal things, but I'm talking about within the basketball spectrum. People got they folks that they want to have on their team, or that they have previous experiences with having coached at a different spot, and they bring them there and they want them, and then they X off other people. And sometimes that's just the nature of the business. But expansion would be good, but like you said, you have to have the revenue in order to bring that in. And even though that would create more jobs and help a lot of young players grow and develop, even if they want bad teams and keep a check rolling in, you still gonna have some players that get left out. An example of this is like what with the Sky. I think about the story of Rebecca Gardner. I never heard of Rebecca Gardner until she took the floor for the Chicago Sky. And when I read her story, I was amazed by it, because it's like she put in over 10 plus years playing in Europe, all across overseas land, and we just not hearing about her. I didn't even know she had a storied career at UCLA. and everything. And maybe that was in part to UCLA not being on the level of a program such as a South Carolina, Connecticut, or whatever. But it made me feel bad. It made me really want to, continue to watch her game. And she was a huge boost for the Sky last year. And she was one of the more popular players on the team and became an instant fan favorite because of her defensive play and her ability to hit big shots and whatnot and spot key veterans on that team, such as Vandersloot and Allie Quigley, who are no longer here. And as a result, she was able to parlay that into getting a full-time role with this guy going into this season. So I think expansion can help greatly, and it would open up more jobs and opportunities for young women to make it into the WNBA. But with that, I don't know how you make expansion happen when you still got a CBA that you got to negotiate that's set to expire, I believe, at the end of this season, if not the next season. So it's so many issues. And then we still got to handle player salaries. We got some of the top stars in the WNBA not making top dollar. Like Aja Wilson's contract that she signed off on with the Aces in Vegas, that was like a landmark extension. But I looked at that and I'm like, man, as great as it is to see, we still got a long way to go in helping that game grow and generate more revenue.
But that's a good point that you kind of highlighted as well. Even though expansion can be part of the solution, you still got so many other issues that go along with that solution, to go with that process, that you're still fighting for to this day. And that's why I appreciate Natasha Cloud, because she's always one of the most outspoken people that defend the rights of women athletes. But you're not just dealing with salaries. You're still dealing with charter flights. You're still dealing with hotels. You're still dealing with compensation for when you make big events. You're dealing with trophies. Like, you're still dealing with the size of trophies, right? There's so many other areas that you're fighting in for equal rights that before you even think about expansion, you need to have those things solidified first so that the standard and the foundation is set. And when that expansion kicks in, those same rights carry out to the other teams within the league. You don't even have the necessities pretty much met yet. So we got to get to that level first before we even think about expanding another team or two and whatever rate that looks like, because the standard for equality in that league, whether it's superstar or not, is nowhere near the level of consistency when you compare it to the big brother of the NBA. And that's what you're fighting for. Like, so there has to be some type of equal standard set for all players in the way that they've been treated and should be rightfully deserving to be treated compared to their brothers in the NBA that get that times 10, 15, 20. Like, there's levels to this that still got to be met before you even think about the ultimate level of a solution, such as expanding the league like that.
Yeah, and then, it's 2023, and we just a couple of weeks past from receiving the news that the Las Vegas Aces have a state-of-the-art practice facility, which is a first in the WNBA.
Yep.
Like, standalone practice facility. They don't have to share with nobody in the village or the city. It's not at a park district. Like, it's their own facility. And when you hear a veteran like Candace Parker talk about, I've been in the league for 15 years and always wanted something like this and never had it, that makes you stop and think. And I love Natasha Cloud and what she's trying to fight for. I want to see expansion as well. I do. I think it's coming. It should be, because when you have viewership of the WNBA rising, not only here in America, but in Canada, where the Sky and Link played the first ever game during the finale of their preseason this past weekend. When you have that, like, yeah, it makes you think about a WNBA team in Toronto. It does sound pretty cool. That does sound alluring. It makes you think about other markets that haven't been tapped into. I know Elena Beard former WNBA star with the Sparks. She's been fighting to bring a WNBA team to Oakland. I would love to see that, especially in the wake of what's transpired in the city of Oakland over the last decade, with them having lost the Raiders, the Warriors, and soon to be the Oakland Athletics. I think that would be a cool thing to have a WNBA team in Oakland. I'm pretty sure if they were very good, the fans would come out and support them. Yes, it's needed, but I don't think it's the full answer. But I do respect that she's fighting for it, and I respect that these players are bringing light to these issues, because if they weren't, I don't think a lot of people would know about it. And as a result, we wouldn't be able to have these conversations that we're having right now. But I want to move on from that to talking about Brittany Griner. She made her unofficial return to basketball in the Mercury's preseason finale against the LA Sparks, marking the first game for Griner since she starred in Game 4 of the 2021 WNBA Finals against the Chicago Sky. What are your expectations for the 8-time All-Star who enters the 2023 season after spending nearly 2 years away from the game due to all of the unfortunate events that she transpired out in Russia? She had 10 points in her preseason debut in 17 minutes. Said she liked the shots she got on offense, in the two-man game she had with Diana Taurasi, but she said her defense needs some work, and just, trying to get her win has been a struggle. But what's your expectations for her?
I'm not going to push for high expectations because, like you said, this is her first year playing in 2 years. It's going to take a while, and it's not like she has a long season. You only have max 40 games, and that's outside of the playoffs, right? And the playoff structure is different from the NBA. You're not going to play a best of 7. It's really the best of 5, and that's best of 3 in the first round. So you're only looking at playing max, 50, 55 games compared to, that's, even though that's a lot for a WNBA season, because this is the most of the games they played all year long, it may not be enough to get that much of what she already was bringing to the table back. And we shouldn't expect her to be so dominant coming back. I expect her to have a revenge tour. Like, I want her to have a revenge tour on the fact that she's been gone for all this time, from a mentality perspective. But getting back into the swing of things, I really do think it might take a whole year to do that. And they should give her the grace enough to do that, because they know when she gets it going and she's on point, she's arguably the top best player in the league and the most impactful, especially on the defensive end. So I wouldn't expect high expectations out of them, and especially out of her. They should just work this season through and give her the season to fully get herself back to normal, without, any pressure per se. And I think it'll benefit her in the long run if they were to do that, especially since the season itself being so-called short compared to an NBA season. I wouldn't expect her to have maybe that much time to fully get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, it would be a hell of a story, man, if she was able to get back into the dominant player that she once was and got the Mercury on an unprecedented run towards another championship. It would be a hell of a story if she was able to do that, besides Diana Taurasi, who's not getting any younger, but still a killer in her own right. I think she'll be fine. I don't expect a monster year from her, but I think having Diana there, who she excels playing besides, will help her. But I think the biggest transition for her will be not only getting her conditioning back, but finding a way to get integrated in a new system with Vanessa Nygaard, the head coach of the Mercury, who's in her second season with the franchise, and this is her first season coaching Brittany Griner. So she's trying to get ingrained, not only conditioning wise, but with a new coach and a new system. That's going to take some time. And I think they are giving her grace, because they held her out most of the preseason and she didn't play into the finale. And she looked comfortable offensively, but defensively, like she said, and I would agree with that, she needs a little bit of work, but I'm just glad to see her back out on the floor after all that she's gone through, because she could have easily said, I don't think I want to return to basketball this season. But she's been open with the media and discussing it and letting it be known that, hey, I want to go back to my sanctuary. As we know, for most of these basketball players, that hardwood is to them.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the transition from a coaching perspective. That's going to play a ton. But if you ever was an athlete and you don't work out for 2 years, getting back on the court for any type of conditioning, if you push yourself too hard, your body will break down. It doesn't hold up well. And I don't want that for Brittany Griner, because the worst thing you could do for someone that is that talented and has been away from the game for that long, when they start to get going, they start to get that monster back. And that mentality, like, oh yeah, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And then you realize, oh snap, I can't do what I thought I used to do at this rate no more. I gotta adjust. I don't want that to backfire on her, because a prime person that had that was Shaq. Shaq, being traded as he getting older, thought he could be the most dominant person he used to be, then he didn't. And then when he tried to push himself too hard, that's when the injuries kicked in. And he realized, I'm an old man now. I can't do nothing about this, and I got to move on. I don't want Brittany Griner to go through that, and I doubt she will, because she seems very self-aware of the situations that she's in. But the last thing you want for her is to push her so hard to get back to the level that she was at, that she actually hurts herself in the process, and that prolongs the process of getting back to that top tier talent, which we know she has capabilities of doing so.
Oh, for sure. We got some notable WNBA games taking place on opening weekend. You got the Liberty versus the Mystics on Friday. That's the first time we'll see the foursome of Courtney Vandersloot, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, and Jonquel Jones all in action in the nation's capital, playing against former Sky Star and two-time league MVP Elena Del Don to open up the year. You got the Sun versus the Fever on Friday. That's going to mark the official debut of the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, Aaliyah Boston out of South Carolina for the Fever out in Indy. You got the Aces going up against the Storm on Saturday afternoon. I know those are the marquee matchups, but just as the season goes along, what game are you looking forward to watching the most this year outside of the much anticipated matchup between the Liberty and Aces when that takes place a month from now near the end of June on the 29th?
I low-key want to see Chicago Sky and the Dallas Wings. And I think that's going to be an interesting game, because obviously you made the trade to get Allie here. But Arike is on a tear this year. I expect her to go crazy this year. And I want to see how that matchup between those two go at it, knowing that, you still got Kyle over there that's going to be playing against Arike like that on the other side of the court. So I'm definitely interested in seeing that specific type of matchup. And of course, how could you not? New York Liberty against the Seattle Storm. I got to see, obviously, it's the first home going for Brianna Stewart to come back to Seattle for the first time. But at the same time, the home going for Sloop too, with Sloop being from the area. This time she's playing with her new team. I want to see how Seattle welcomes them both as they come back to their alma maters and foreign, and in a lot of ways home grounds, old stomping grounds, in their quest for a championship, and the Seattle Storm looking for that new, moving forward in that new direction.
Yeah, that'll be a hell of a matchup. I know that'll be a packed house at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle whenever that matchup takes place. Arike Ogunbowale, man, she one of the top scorers in the league. I remember I had a chance to watch her when she was a McDonald's All-American, because I was keeping a clock at the All-American games up at Quest. And I could tell from the moment I first saw her play, like she was going to be something, man, because she's giving folks the business. If she could ever just, find a way to balance the scoring with the playmaking, Dallas going to be in good shape for the next 5 years and running. So, yeah, I like those two matchups. For me, though, I'm going to go with the first matchup of the season, Liberty and Mystics. I don't know how you could go against that one. That's looking like the matchup to watch. I know Aces versus Liberty, that sells itself. All the top stars in the league playing for both teams, but Liberty versus Mystics, that's the game I'm looking forward to seeing the most, because this Mystics team, they've been where the Liberty are trying to go and never been. They've been to the WNBA finals. They've won. Now it's all about trying to get that back with a veteran core that we talked about earlier, Natasha Cloud, Elena Deladon, in the addition of Brittany Sykes with Ariel Atkins and Christy Tolliver. So that should be a fun one. But I want to move away from WNBA talk to talking about the NBA playoffs, where the Celtics, the Heat, the Nuggets, and the Lakers all advanced to the conference final round after knocking off their respective opponents in the New York Knicks, Phoenix Suns, and Golden State Warriors, respectively, in 6 games. However, after finally seeing matters decided out in the West, the rest of the basketball world had to wait and see who the Miami Heat would go up against in the Eastern Conference Finals, as a hard-fought battle between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics was brewing in the Eastern semis that would end up going 7 games. And in the end, it would be the defending Eastern Conference champion, Boston Celtics, as they would come back in the series while facing elimination, going down 3-2 to defeat Philly in blowout fashion on Mother's Day afternoon in Beantown, led behind Jason Tatum's 51 points on the day, breaking Stephen Curry's record set in the previous round by 1 point for the most points ever scored in a Game 7 during Golden State's first round win against Sacramento. Gotta ask you, Josh, straight up, what went right for Boston over the final 2 games of this series? And what do you think went wrong for Philadelphia, who for the 5th time in the last 6 seasons has seen their year come to an unfortunate ending in the conference semis?
What went right was Jason Tatum. That's what went right. Anytime Jason Tatum, between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, you get Jason Tatum to only score 6 points, single digits, in a game that you are hosting at home. That's your cue to close that thing out. You can't expect Jason Tatum to just be that cold for consecutive games. So, especially when the game is going back to his home floor, you should have closed out the deal when you could have, and they didn't. Jason Tatum made sure, like, okay, I'm gonna let y'all know, I'm not gonna let this happen again. We're gonna win this game. We're gonna close out the way we should have closed it out. And for him to erupt the way that he did, not surprised at all. It was well deserving of it. He did what James Harden should have done in Philly, and he snatched their soul. He just took it out of them, sucked the life out of them, and paid the dividends. So that's what went wrong for Boston. Went right for Boston was Jason Tatum just picking up where he should have continued at and taking things to the next level. But where things went wrong in Philly, everybody went wrong. I'm going at everybody, because you can't sit here and be called MVP and you shooting 8 for 29 in Game 7. You can't be MVP and you barely show up in Game 6. This is what the playoffs are made of. MVPs are supposed to shine in the moments where it counts in the biggest stages. That's why you're an MVP. And Joel Embiid, as great as you were all season long, you failed in your moments to prove your worth. And that's part of why you lost. You did not come through in the way that we know you can come through when the lights were on the shine brightest the most. And that goes the same for James Harden. But James Harden is different from Joel Embiid, because Joel Embiid, this is his first chance as the front runner like that to go out the way that he did. Previous years it was Ben Simmons, but Joel Embiid did the job. This was his first time really going through that and not being the front runner and not getting it done. But James Harden, we thought that narrative changed this year. We thought that playoff narrative changed to where, he was going to come through in the biggest moments. He was going to have meltdowns. He melted down in Game 6. but that carried over into game 7. He didn't even and what made me upset watching him play, it seemed like he checked out when the game started. It made it seem like he was like, okay, I really don't want to be here. Season's over. Let's just pack it. Like, he didn't have that aggression to rise up and take over and be the leader that Philly needed him to be. When Boston came out swinging, it's like he just gave up and said, all right, whatever. It's all good. We lost. I may not even be here next year. Like, that's where, as a leader in the face and are one of the faces of your franchise, and someone who has known for over the past years since he's been in the league, he has been very inconsistent with living up to that title of clutch and the dominant player in the playoffs. This wasn't a good look for him. And I hated to watch how that went down, because James Harden really just acted like, I don't care anymore. It's done. He stopped being aggressive. And that's not what you want from someone that you claim to be one of your franchise leaders. That's something you don't want. And that display didn't only make him look bad, but it made Doc look bad too. And that led, and I know that's going to lead to him eventually getting fired, but
we're going to get into that.
Yeah, we'll get.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
You're right.
I'm gonna definitely talk about that, because we're gonna assess the state of the Sixers and the Warriors shortly. And you talk about Harden. I have his numbers up from game 7. Through 41 minutes, he scored 9 points, shot 3 of 11 from the field, 1 of 5 for 3-point range, with only 6 rebounds and 7 assists in a blowout loss. I'm gonna say this on it. What went right for Boston was Boston found spacing within the floor of their offense, and they started doing what they do best. They moved the ball around. And then in game 7, they said, you know what? We're going to get Joel Embiid on an island. We know he has a sprained LCL. It's affecting his lateral movement. Jason Tatum, we're going to get you in a pick and roll with him. Take advantage of the matchup. He can't move like he usually does. That's one of his weaknesses anyway, is guarding his space. I watch a lot of Sixers basketball, so I know that. He took advantage of that, and when he did and went on a tear, and when they started to try and send a double team to shield Embiid, I'm going to find an open shooter. He going to knock it down. That's exactly what happened. That's what keyed their run in game 7, and they never looked back. That's what went right for Boston. What went wrong for Philadelphia was guys not being aggressive. Guys not only not being aggressive, when I say guys, I'll single out the 2 guys that I'm talking about, Joel Embiid and James Harden. I'm one of the biggest James Harden fans that there is. But I said before the series that in order for the Sixers to win this series, and I believe they had every shot to win it going in. Mm-hmm. And even in hindsight, I still believe that they could have won that series if James Harden just did a couple of things consistently, night in and night out. And I could have lived with the result either way. You have to take at least, at minimum, 10 threes a game. You got to take 10 threes a game. You got to ignite and set the pace of each and every game offensively. And you got to pick and choose your spots on when to score and when to create for others. Some nights, such as in game 1, he did that. In game 1, he had 45 points. He took 30 shots, even though Embiid wasn't playing. Game 4, he took 23 shots and scored 42 points. What do those 2 games have in common? The Sixers won. He also took 14 threes in game 1. He took 9 threes in game 4. He was 7 of 14 from 3 in game 1. He was 6 of 9 from 3 in game 4. When he sought to utilize his step back, and was shooting it, things fared well for them. But he stopped taking shots, and that was the issue. He could afford to do that in game 5 because of the way that the Celtics were guarding Joel Embiid. They were sagging off of him so much to where they was giving him everything in the mid-range area of the floor. He just took it. It was a layup for him. But in order for the Sixers to overcome Boston, they needed James not to be Houston James Harden, but they needed him to be like a lightweight version of that. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that he was getting into the mid-range area of the floor, something that he didn't do enough of in the prime of his career in Houston, where it was predicated to him that we only want you to shoot threes and get to the rim and lay it up, if not get to the free throw line. He didn't do that consistently, man. He didn't look for his. And I didn't get a chance to see game 7. I got to go back and watch that. But based off of what I saw in the closing minutes of game 7, just catching like that fourth quarter in its entirety, it did look sad. It did look as though, hey, man, we had a good run, guys. It's nothing we can do. It's nothing we can do. And that was sad to see. But I think that's what went wrong. And the guys didn't trust one another. They lost that series. When I look back, they really lost that series in game 6, the final 5 minutes of regulation in the fourth quarter, when they had a lead. And instead of moving the ball around offensively and finding an open man, living and dying with the results of a PJ Tucker shooting threes, which is what they wanted. That's what the Celtics was giving them. Sometimes you just got to trust your guys. They didn't want to trust them. They wanted to play ISO ball. And then they got away from Joel on the block after he was working, and it was paying dividends towards their success and helping them overcome a double-digit Boston lead and turning that into their advantage in front of their home crowd. That's where the game was lost. It was lost there, and committing too many turnovers. But like you said, when you have a game where Jason Tatum is in the single digits going into halftime, you got to be looking at yourself like, hey, the time is now. And I thought Philly would take advantage of that because they were showing growth over the course of the last several months of being a team that in the fourth quarter could close out games. Half-court defense was actually looking pretty damn good. But when the money was on the line in Philadelphia in front of their home crowd, they didn't trust one another. And I think that's the biggest thing that cost them. And I don't know if that was Doc's fault. I really don't believe it was Doc's fault, who has the most game 7 losses in NBA history. I don't think it was his fault. I mean, every game 7 he's been in with the Sixers, his stars just haven't delivered. They just haven't delivered. And I don't know if a coach can do too much about that. Where I come from, the players have to take accountability. It's going to be a long summer for Joel Embiid and James Harden. I think they're going to think about this for a long time, no matter what the future holds for them.
I agree, man. And with recent reports, coming out from Ramona Shelburne saying that Harden really don't want to play with Doc.
Yeah, I heard that.
Philly got to make a decision here, because the reality is, as much as this merely may not have been Doc Rivers' fault, he's always been on the hot seat. Even going back to last season, he's always been on the hot seat. The front office makeup is predominantly James Harden-esque support from the Houston Rocket days. And that,
well.
and obviously, like they're gonna do what it takes to make James Harden happy, to make him stay. So, what's the best way to do that? Gotta get rid of Doc. And I think for them being, with this report now being public saying he doesn't want to play for Doc anymore, yeah, that's your best chance of getting him to stay. Now, is it a guarantee? No, it's not a guarantee. But that's what they're going to have to do to make this work. That's what Daryl's going to have to do. Daryl Morey's going to have to do. And Daryl Morey is the type of person that will pull the plug to get it done. So It's unfortunate. And yes, a lot of ways in previous series and previous destinations of Doc Rivers and where he's been, yeah, some of that has been on him. He's blown a lot of stuff, a lot of games and stuff. But this go around, especially when, like you said, with the tenure in Philly, a lot of that really wasn't his fault, I don't think. I really feel like it was just the star players and what they was going through and not getting a job done when it needed it the most. Because surprisingly, especially this series, Doc has made good adjustments to counteract what Boston was doing, which was giving Philly really predominantly the lead this whole entire series. It just crumbled.
Let's cut to the chase then. We're going to get into the Philadelphia 76ers right now. They finished the regular season with a 54-28 record, which was good enough to help them earn the third overall seed in the East. Joel Embiid averaged a career best 33.1 points per game to go alongside 10.2 rebounds per game on 55% shooting from the floor, on the way to his first MVP award and also earning all NBA first team honors, becoming the first Sixer since Allen Iverson to earn both accolades. James Harden averaged 21 and 10 through 58 games in the regular season, on the way to becoming the first player in NBA history to capture 3 scoring titles and 2 assist titles in his career to date. Tyrese Maxey also took his game to another level in his third season out of Kentucky, averaging 20.3 points per game, on the way to shooting over 40% from beyond the arc. However, it wasn't enough, as we know that the Sixers fell on the short end of the stick, and they now find themselves having to ponder upon things after a rough exit this year in the conference semis at the hands of the Celtics. Key members of their rotation, such as Georges Niang, Shake Milton, they're now set to enter free agency this summer. James Harden, who is expected to forego a $35.6 million salary next season that he's set to be owed on the final year of his deal. He's expected to utilize that player option and make his way onto the marketplace for the first time in his storied career. They have no draft picks in the draft this upcoming June. They forfeited the right to their second round pick via tampering while pursuing PJ Tucker and Daniel House Jr. last summer during the free agency period. I want to start off with this question first, because this is going to be, I'm going to do this in 3 parts, because we've been talking about the Sixers off and on throughout this season.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe the 2022-2023 Sixers season, starting off with that first?
Ooh, how would I describe it? Disappointment. I'll say it's disappointing because James Harden took a pay cut for the Sixers to boost this roster. And rightfully so, they did that. This was a better roster compared to last year. With the emergence of Tyrese Maxey showing that he's a valuable option on the offensive end, and a good option to pair with James Harden. That duo worked in that backcourt. And Joel Embiid coming back was something to prove, knowing that he was gunning for that MVP this year, and he made it known that he was going to do it by the way he was playing. When you have that type of talent and you have situations where, yeah, people wrote in Boston, but Milwaukee fell out early. You had a prime opportunity to take out Boston, which was going to be your next best problem, and you didn't do it. Like, even though the season was great, it was a failure. It was a failure. And it's disappointing when you knew heading into this series that you was not, if you was to win and beat Boston, you was not going to have to worry about the Bucks. You was going to have to worry about the Miami Heat or the New York Knicks, teams that you have shown you can beat. I don't know where the urgency is when it comes to the team in the locker room and understanding the situations that you're in. Because that should have been a moment where guys like PJ Tucker, guys like James Harden that been to the Western Conference Finals, and stuff like that, that know what it takes to get there, that's the time to strike. And in a lot of ways, those players were non-existent. And that's disappointing when you know you have that in your as your repertoire. With a coach that can get it done. It's not like you had Brett Brown. Doc Rivers was an upgrade from Brett Brown. And this is that championship coach. He knows what it takes to win a championship. So, yeah, it's disappointing. I think it was very disappointing how they fell out this year, especially since they had a chance to really go further than maybe what we expected.
I have to be very careful how I use the word failure, because I know it's 30 teams in the league. And I remember David Griffin, when he was the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers, he said, there's only one happy general manager at the end of the season. And that's the one who's helped lead his team to the gold ball. The other 29 teams are always trying to chase that feeling each and every summer, each and every day until they get it. And while I didn't expect the Sixers going into the season to be a favorite to win the NBA championship, I felt like if it was any year for them to do it, especially in the wake of what transpired 2 seasons ago, when they did have the #1 overall seed in Doc Rivers' first season, and they lost at home in Game 7 to the Atlanta Hawks in the conference semifinal round due to a performance from Ben Simmons that, in spite of his playmaking ability being mesmerizing, left a lot to be desired on the scoring end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it was any year for him to do it, it was this year. I thought that this team would be a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. They did that. I thought Joel Embiid would be named the recipient of the Most Valuable Player award. He did that. I thought this team would win over 50 plus games. They did that. But when you have a 3-2 series lead and you're going up against a team that you struggled against throughout the season and you have that opportunity, the time is now. And they didn't seize the moment. And as a result of that, it is a disappointment. And you talk about how James Harden took a pay cut for them to make the moves that they did, to bring in a PJ Tucker, to bring in a Daniel House Jr., who, in spite of him falling out the rotation, in Game 5, he rose to the occasion. Tobias Harris also did.
Mm-hmm.
They got performances from the guys that they needed to put themselves in a position to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. If the Sixers would have gotten to the NBA Finals and lost, that still would have been an accomplishment, because it would have been the first time that they did that in over 2 decades. And I really thought that they had matured. But now I understand why James Harden, after his performance in Game 1, was so quick to huddle them guys up and say, it's just one game. Maybe they hadn't grown up yet. And I don't think that this team did. And I thought that they were taking those steps. I think that they grew up in some ways, but they didn't grow up in the ultimate way in which they needed in order to take that next step. And that was getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, where I believe had they gotten there, they could have put themselves in good position, especially with home court advantage up against a Miami Heat squad led by Jimmy Butler. I wish we could have got that series, but unfortunately we won't. But it was a disappointing year because of the ups and downs that they had and finding a way to navigate through them, but not enough to close the deal when they were up 3-2, especially when you had an opportunity to take care of business in your own building. And this is, I want to say, the second time in the last 4 or 5 seasons they've done that. Because remember, they was up 3-2, I believe, on the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
They was up 3-2 on the Raptors, I believe. So I don't know what to say, but anything else but a disappointment. It was a disappointment. But I want to ask you, my next question is on Joel Embiid. his point average dropped from 33.1 points in the regular season to 23.7 in the playoffs. It marked the largest drop-off by an MVP during the postseason in league history. He missed 2 games in the playoffs due to spraining his LCL early on in the playoffs against the Nets. One of those games came in that series when the Sixers swept Brooklyn during Game 4 round 1. The other one came in the series opener against the C's in the conference semifinal round. Now, Doc said in his post-game presser following Game 7 that Embiid deserves a break and how he would just love for him to have a fully healthy playoff run at least once. As those who follow Philly, they're aware of the fact that Embiid has dealt with a fair share of injuries and playoffs past. How much of his struggles do you attribute to his health as much as his playing style, to which so many often criticize come this time of year?
Yeah, I'm gonna be real blunt. It's his playing style. Because yes, injuries do play a role in it. But there's a lot of people that play injured. No one's fully healthy going into the playoffs. That's the grind of an 82-game season. And you want to talk about playing with the greats. There's a lot of greats that played through injuries and still won titles or went very far into the playoffs. So if you call yourself, especially the MVP of the league, you unfortunately don't have that excuse, or not to the same magnitude as you want that excuse to be. So, playing style. He went away from his craft. We talked about this earlier in the show. He went away from his biggest asset offensively, which was killing it in the paint. He was a force and a threat on the block. And there was no answer for him. But they did not stick to that game plan. They went to isolation ball. He shot a lot more threes, did a lot more dribble, pull-up, jump shots. And all honesty, watching the last few games of that series was like me watching the Bulls all season long. They never know how to stick to a game plan. It's always inconsistent offensively. But similar to the Bulls all season, the most success they get is when Vooch had the ball in the paint. Philadelphia was the same way. You put Joel Embiid on the block, good things happen. And it opens the way of success, not just for guys like James Harden, but Tyrese Maxey. Like, they open up the game for a lot of players when you play that way. And they didn't. He settled, and a lot of it could be due to injury, but you still settled for an offensive system and an offensive play that neglected the positive impact in the way you was playing previously prior to that. And in the playoffs, you cannot do that, because that is detrimental to the success of your offense. And they had to pay a price for that. So yeah, Joel Embiid, you played hurt. Valid excuse. But guess what? Everybody's hurt. It's the playoffs. You trying to win a championship? You have to go through the grind. And if you're able to play, you're going to have to play through the injuries to win titles. And because of that, that should not ultimately affect you from playing in the way that you know led to winning basketball. And that did not come to reality for Joel Embiid.
You know, I got to give Joel Embiid some credit in spite of his lackluster performance in Game 7. I've seen the dude play through many injuries over the course of his playoff career. He don't complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not asking for people's sympathy. I just want to make sure we clear on that before I speak on it. I'm going to go 50-50. In Game 6, towards the last, I would say, 5 minutes in regulation, and in Game 7, yes, he did settle. Those last 2 games, the 2.5 games, yeah, he settled. He got away from it. I can kind of understand how, though, when you have a pull-up jumper like he does, which you could argue is one of the top 5 in the league when he really has it going. But when you're missing over and over again, and you know how much gravity you command on a post, and when you have the ability to pass it out of the double team, something that he showed a high level of maturity of being able to do in Game 4 when the Sixers rallied back against Boston and took it in overtime to win, keep going to your bread and butter. But I do think some of it is due to his health, because I remember when I was a kid, we talked about another Sixers great that he joined in regards to being an MVP and an all NBA first team selection. And that's Allen Iverson. They used to have a poster of Allen Iverson and like all the arrows of all the injuries that he had, and he was playing through them. They used to have that poster. You can make that same damn poster for Joel Embiid. And it is, and you're right. Everybody is playing through injuries. You damn right. It's a war of attrition in the NBA playoffs. Everybody goes through something. Nobody is fully 100% this time of year. I don't give a damn what they tell you. That's a fact. But I would love to see him in the playoffs where his lateral movement ain't affected, where I don't have to worry about this man's vision like I did when he's playing against Miami, because it is always something. And I can't understand how that could be frustrating for a coach like Doc Rivers, who knows his best players' ability and talent, when he's fully 100% or close to it compared to when he's not. So I get it. But I think it's 50-50. I'm not making no excuses for him. But one thing I want to point out that I didn't realize or know until I saw it in an article prior to us recording, Joel Embiid is the only MVP in the history of the league to have never played in a conference finals at any given point of his career. And I'm pretty sure that's something that he's going to hear a lot of over the offseason when he pays attention to things. And as much as athletes like to say that they don't pay attention to what's being reported, they do. I know that that's going to bother the fuck out of him. Because it really blows my mind, personally, that he's the only one. Even when you think back to like the last 20 plus years, even Steve Nash got to a conference finals a couple of times, even before Phoenix, when he won back-to-back MVPs. Jokic is going to his second conference finals this year in the last 4 seasons. It's unfortunate, but I do have to attribute some of his struggles to the health, because there's always something. And when you got to miss games during a playoff run, which is something I know he don't like to do, and then you combine that with all the other issues he was dealing with before, because I recall him playing through a foot injury when I was in Milwaukee and watched him game the Bucks late to snap their 16-game winning streak, which was the longest in the league this season. You have to attribute that to like both factors. I get the argument for him playing in the post more, but man, when you got that mid-range jumper working like he had in game 5, I can understand why he kept taking it. Because they was backing up off of him, and those were practice shots. He just got in a rhythm. But when those shots aren't falling, you have to have enough of a mental capacity to say, you know what? I need to change my approach a little bit. James, get me in a pick and roll game. We got the best 2-man pick and roll game in the league. Nobody's messing with that. Get me on a pick and roll. Let me go down on a block or whatever. Set me up with a oop. I got to get going. Then maybe I can revert back to that, but I need to see the ball go through the net a couple of times. I don't think we saw that in these playoffs down the stretch when they needed a bucket. And that's why you saw so many droughts from Philadelphia's offense. But I want to ask you before we move on, James Harden and Doc Rivers, do you believe that the two will be back next season in Philadelphia?
No, I don't. I think Philly's going to let Doc Rivers go. And I think James Harden is not going to want to come back. I think he has checked out of the fact that even though Joel Embiid is going to be by far probably the best talented player he's played against or played with that can help him win, I don't know if he's beyond. I'm just being real. I don't know if he's really able to handle the pressure of winning a championship in an environment that prides on winning. And Philadelphia is one of those cities where you better come through and give it your all and win it, or you know what, you're gonna hear it, you're gonna feel it. When you come from Oklahoma City to Houston, and then level up Houston in an area in an era where they've been MIA for the most part since Hakeem Olajuwon, they'll take they'll take anything. But I don't think James Harden is fit for that Philly sports market. When you talk about the level of expectations that they have and the way they want you to achieve it, I don't think he's cut off for that. I really don't. There's levels to players that win and actually love basketball, desire to win basketball, and will do what it takes to get there. I don't think James Harden is one of those guys. And because of that, he's going to go to what fits him the best and what's comfortable for him on and off the court. I do think he is going to go back to Houston. Knowing that there's still Houston ties that are there and the current connections that are there now from a coaching perspective is a coach that he approves, and we know he approves and have experience with. So yeah, I don't think either one of them come back next year.
I remember coming on the show when y'all was doing running, you, Cal, Means, and Drew Stevens. I remember coming on the show and we had a conversation about what would be the best fit for Harden if he left Houston, or do you think leaving Houston would be worth it for him? And I remember saying I thought Houston was the place that gave him the best chance to win as the main guy. Mm-hmm. I still think that as the main guy, but he's at a stage of his career where he's no longer the main guy, and he's not getting any younger. He doesn't have that quick first step that he used to. He doesn't have that quick burst that he used to. That's why you see him taking so many mid-range shots, because he can't beat defenders the way he used to going to the rim. And, those years where he was averaging 30 plus for 3 years straight, it took a lot of tread off the tires.
Yeah.
With that said, I think Joel Embiid's the best damn big man he's ever played with.
Agreed.
And unless if he knows something that we don't in regards to the Rockets getting a superstar, for them to elevate their status back atop of the Western Conference standings like it was during the prime of his career in Houston, I don't know what he's going back for. I think this might be his best opportunity to win a title. He may not be the main guy, but he would be a damn good co-star next to Embiid. And what they've been able to build, I think they could continue building off of that. Will that happen? I don't know. Based off what I'm hearing, and I know some people that's in Houston, and I know some people that's close to James. I don't know, but I do know that something is a brewing, and I don't take those Houston rumors lightly. I have not, since I've heard them since Christmas Day when Woj reported. I'm not taking them lightly at all. I know he has tight relationships with Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, and not Ime Udoka, who was his former assistant in Brooklyn. Whole nine, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to place a bet on who is more likely to be back, I would say Doc. And the only reason why I say Doc gets a pass is because Doc has done a hell of a job in Philly.
I agree.
I don't know if you're going to find too many other coaches that do a better job. I just don't. And I've given Doc a hard time at times, especially when it comes to these 3-1 playoff leads in which he's blown. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, all of it ain't on Doc. And when it comes to the Sixers meltdowns in Game 7, I can't put all that on Doc. Especially when you getting less than 10 points from vital core players who you had the pleasure of coaching there in Game 7, such as Ben Simmons, such as Harden himself. Harden didn't score any points during the fourth quarter from Games 5 through 7. We didn't discuss that in Game 5 because it resulted in a Sixers win, and Joel Embiid was so dominant. But I think Doc gets one more year. If he doesn't, I'm very interested to see who's going to get that job. And I would not be shocked, and I said this to you in November because we talked about if Doc was on the hot seat then. I would not be shocked that the first person that the Sixers reach out to is Jay Wright. I would not be. I don't know how likely that is, but I think that's the guy they reach out to. But if I had to put money on Harden coming back, I wouldn't do that. It's not a safe enough bet for me to do that. It's just not. And we talk about Houston. Rumors been surfacing that Phoenix could be in the cards.
Yeah.
And you know who's in Phoenix? Kevin Durant. Who's the last player that James Harden had the privilege of playing in the NBA Finals with? Kevin Durant. That's why he went to Brooklyn. That could be why he goes to Phoenix or elsewhere. We'll stay tuned on that. But I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors. 44-38 record in the regular season, barely avoided the play-in round out west after winning 8 out of their last 10 games, including their final 3 outings on the regular season to earn the 6th seed in the playoffs a year after capturing their 4th title in the last 8 years. Finished with a 33-8 record at the Chase Center during the regular season, yet boasted the worst record on the road among playoff teams with an 11-30 record away from San Francisco. Stephen Curry was Stephen Curry per usual, flirted with a 50-40-90 season, nearly after averaging nearly 29, 6, and 6 per game through 56 games during the regular season for the Dubs, on the way to earning second team All-NBA honors at the age of 35. Managed to knock off the Kings in the opening round of the playoffs and one of the best postseason matchups to take place this year on the postseason. However, the Warriors ended up falling short at the hands of the Lakers in round 2 after a hard-fought 6-game series. What are your thoughts on the 2022-2023 Warriors season, Josh?
As much as the team was trying to revert and bring some young people and some young depth to this roster, if you're trying to max out Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, you need some vets in there. I don't think they're completely done. But if they don't make any roster moves that fit Steph, Klay, and Draymond right now, they will be done. It's a wrap. And one of the first moves they're gonna have to make is get rid of Jordan Poole. I think they're gonna have to look at getting rid of Jordan Poole because you keep him there and you do re-sign Draymond. You think they're gonna work out that chemistry issue over there? Oh no, it's gonna kill that locker room again. And that's I really believe what prevented them from moving forward. One of the reasons that prevented them from moving forward. And if I was Golden State, it wouldn't be a bad time to trade him, considering that even though he signed that extension, he had a down year. And the down year was pretty bad in the biggest moments. You could get a bargain on that potentially when you're talking about trading and getting something in return. So I think I just don't necessarily I feel like anytime you got Steph Curry on your team and he is connected to the Splash Brother as one of the top 3 shooters in history, you can't go wrong with that. You always gonna have a fighter's chance. And Draymond Green is a key component to how that offense runs and thrives. You bring him back, you just need to put the right talents around them. And at this present moment, it may not be the young guys that you currently have. You might have to go veteran. And I think that's the only way they can go at this present moment if they want to max out the opportunities, because you need to have people that not just play up to the level of expectations every night, but at the same time understand the urgency of the situations that they're in, knowing that Steph, Klay, and Draymond aren't going to be there forever. And this is the time that you need to exploit getting the best out of them if you want to bring back another title, and especially a 5th title that will put them in the upper echelon of the dynasties of the other dynasties that's being created in the league.
Man, Kevon Looney, I salute you.
Man,
you did the Lord's work on the glass. You really did. You took Domantas Sabonis out the picture. That's not easy to do. And you were one of the main reasons why they won the championship a season ago.
Yeah.
However, he's 6'9". You got to get a real center in there. You got to get yourself some girth on the block to match up with these teams that like to play big.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you can't, they're going to make you pay. And you didn't have a bench. That's what cost you. And as far as I'm concerned, as much as I love Klay Thompson, one of the most selfless all-stars I've ever seen, truly selfless players, sacrifices for the greater good of the team, all of that. His shot selection in these playoffs, when he wasn't on, Golden State couldn't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it spelled their doom. I really do. I didn't expect him to be the same defensive player that he worked himself into being, coming off the torn ACL and the Achilles. But they really can't afford him lagging now if they trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about wanting to trade Jordan Poole. Klay Thompson looking like a guy whose spot might not be safe. And when we talk about all these things, should they trade Jordan Poole? Should they keep Draymond and sign him to an extension? Should they sign Klay Thompson to an extension? Who's the man that's supposed to be making these decisions? Bob Myers. Oh, yeah. We don't know. We don't know if he's gonna be here past the end of June. We don't know. We don't know that. And we're gonna get into that. And I'm gonna ask you that later on. Do you think he stick around? But do you believe that the team that was once light years ahead of the NBA is Warriors majority owner Joe LaCobe described them to be just 7 years ago? Do you think they've seen their incredible run on top of the league come to a close for good this time around? Now, last year, they had their moment in the sun. They could talk their trash because a lot of people had counted them out, including me. And I'll be the first to say it. I still think that Celtics team was better than them. They just knew how to execute down the stretch, and that's why they won.
Man, what's that question again?
I said, have the Warriors seen their incredible run atop of the league come to a close for good this time around? This was the franchise that was supposed to be light years ahead of everybody. And for almost a decade, it seemed that way. But now I think teams catching up.
Yeah, teams are catching up for sure. But I don't think the Warriors are done. They just need to do a lot of retooling. And the retooling is going to have to be what you started with. You need some big man depth. You need defense. You need to be able to handle what the other players are doing, because other teams are doing. Because the difference was back in the championship days, they're playing a lot of teams that they can go small against because it was still a big man era. Now those bigs are much more versatile, and they're able to keep up with the smaller squads. So because of that, when they want to go big, they can dominate the bigs, because Golden State Warriors was so used to small ball, especially when you had Kevin Durant there. They made that transition easy. Whereas now, small ball is not just being played throughout every team in the league, but a lot of teams still have big men that they can use for big lineups when necessary. And it's predominantly really for the defensive end. The Warriors don't have that size in there. So you got to fill that up. Yes, the bench definitely has to improve, but that's why I also feel like you need to improve your bench with veteran talent, not these young guys. Because the young guys on that roster, even though they can contribute, they're not equipped yet to give the Warriors what they need on both ends of the floor. And the only way you can really fill those voids, which the Warriors have shown that if you have veteran talent, they can win a championship with, you need to get some veteran wing players. You need to get some veteran big men depth. You need some people that can understand mentally what they're really playing with. Because now there's going to be a sense of urgency. This was a wake-up call for them. Like, this is a sense of urgency now where it's like, just because y'all won a championship last year, it's not going to be that sweet trying to repeat. You want to get back to the mountaintop, you're going to have to work twice as hard. And they can't do it with what they have, man. They got to retool big time. And like I said, anytime you got Steph on your team, you can't be counted out. Yes, Steph is getting older. He's not moving as quick as he used to. Same with Klay. but you put the right talent around them, I think they still could be a top 3 team in the West for sure.
I don't doubt Steph Curry ability at all. If Steph Curry not in the picture, we're not even talking championships. Okay, let's get that straight. If Steph Curry said he wanted to leave Golden State, he'd have a line full of suitors.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you that. I don't think it has nothing to do with Steph Curry. I think it has to do with the pieces around Stephen Curry. And you know what changed in the league that don't nobody ever talk about? And me and my friend Torrance, who I had on the show a month ago, during the week you was unable to come on, we always talked about this amongst ourselves. When the Lakers won in 2020 with JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard is the two bigs, that changed the way everybody played. You had to keep a big man. They really laid the blueprint of how championships are won because they took it back to the old school in an era where everybody was trying to play small. Remember, during that time in the bubble, you had the Rockets out here with Jeff Green at the 5 and PJ Tucker.
Yep.
You can't do that no more. Cleveland, even though they're not a championship team, they playing with two bigs and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. You got the Knicks doing it a little bit with Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson. Like these teams playing two bigs at a time. Like you can't be playing all that small ball like you used to. And like you said, they don't have no big, even like an Andrew Bogut big that's like real solid. It's setting the hard screens and protecting the rim and being able to hold it down in a drop coverage. That rim protection just ain't the same. But I want to ask you about Bob Myers, man. His future is still up in the air. He said he planned to make a decision in the next few weeks. He's torn about it, according to Woj, due to his relationships with Steve Kerr and Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson, who served as the core trio in formulating what became that dynasty in the Bay. Do you think he sticks around? If he doesn't, what you think that it means for the future of the franchise?
I'm not gonna lie, I struggle with this one. I struggle with this question. Because a part of me thinks he comes back for one more year. Not long term. I think he comes back for one more year. Give this core another year, see what they're gonna do, roll from there. If that happens, that changes the dynamic about how they go about these free agent options with contract extensions with Klay and Dre. Because the next person that comes in there after Joe Lacob may not want that core to be together.
You mean Bob Myers? Because Joe Lacob gonna be around.
I'm sorry. You're right. Yes, I'm sorry. Bob Myers.
Yeah, I got you.
Whoever replaces him may not want that core to be together. They may be like, all right, this is Steph's team. Everybody else can go. And I think it really depends on if he does, if Bob Myers does come back with that extension. But I really feel like he's going to give this one more year. Because he's starting to venture out in the outside world, and he's doing so well with that, that he's already got his future kind of set up. But that relationship component means a lot, especially since you were there when you drafted Steph, you drafted Klay, you drafted Draymond, and you won 4 titles with them. You're not going to let them go right away. So I think you might have one last dance next year. You might have one last dance. But then after that, Bob Myers says, I'm letting it go. I'm going to move on and do better things. And I think if he's smart, knowing that Steph Curry is going to be there, you let Klay opt into that contract deal. You don't guarantee an extension. You do the same with Draymond. I can't give you multi-year extension because honestly, I don't know if I'm going to be here. Let me give you 1 year, though, because I'm going to guarantee be here for 1 more year. That's going to change everything. And it might be a blessing in disguise for the Warriors if you talk about an urgency perspective that it's like a wake-up call. If you're going to go out, let's go out with a bang. And if they do it right, you could go out like the Bulls did and get another title and have an official last dance that solidifies the end of the true end of an era. I think I'm going to give it one more round.
I don't see it. This man, a former agent, he got a podcast that he currently, got out in the streets with Omaha Productions, owned by Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
The moves have already been established. He could easily go to any front office opening in the league, should he desire it. Anytime I hear Woj use the words that he's torn, I don't think he coming back. I think when I hear stuff like that, the way I interpret it is if he torn, what that mean is he don't know how to break the news to him. But at some point, he's gonna have to.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't think he's gonna stick around is because he's too emotionally invested into this.
Yeah.
It's like he built it. He built it. And it worked. And it was fun. Had all type of guys trying to come to Golden State. David West was ring chasing on the back nine of his career. Got on one at Golden State. Kevin Durant, I want to get me a championship. I'm tired of people talking about me and how I'm not a big player in these moments. Went there, became an elite defender, and proved to be the difference maker, and put the nail in the coffin, really, in the Cavs and Warriors rivalry from 2015 to 2018. Just killed that rivalry off, I think he does not stick around. I don't. And what I think it means for the future of the franchise is that nobody is safe with the exception of Steph Curry. There is only one reason why I believe he is a Warrior for life, and that's because he's brought multiple championships to that franchise. Now, do I think it will come a day in time where maybe Steph plays in another uniform? Maybe, but that might be on the back nine, and that's only if he want that. But I think he a Warrior for life. He's cemented. Guys like Draymond and Clay, I don't know. Steve Kerr maybe might have to even start looking around. But fortunately for Steve Kerr, he's had a career in television, in the front office, that had part ownership in teams such as the Phoenix Suns. He'll be all right. Bob Myers will too. I just don't think he'll be in Golden State next year. I think it's over. I really do. I think it's over. I think the next GM is going to try to compete and leave his mark on it because he's going to have a nice little hand, but he probably going to want to do things his way. Bob Myers, I don't think he want to make them tough decisions. And I know Joe Lacob, he probably like, hey, man, if you don't want to make them, I know somebody who will.
Yeah, that's gonna be that's tough, man. And that's why I said, even though it's probably is a long shot, you get one more year out of me. We just run it back one more time so that we know for sure after this 1 year, it's a wrap. We can go out smooth sailing and give it the last dance that this franchise rightfully does deserve. From a dynasty perspective, this is the biggest dynasty we've had in quite some time, and I can just see that potentially happening. And yeah, like you said, when it does happen, Steve Kerr most likely will be gone. I can honestly see Clay being like, "Take me to LA, I'll hoop with Bron." Take me to LA, I'll hoop with Bron. Let me play for the Lakers like my dad did. I wouldn't be surprised if Dre's like, "Yo, Bron, give me a spot over there too."
Oh, if they let him walk, where he going.
Yeah,
Let me stop, man. I got nothing but love for Draymond, but I can kind of see that right been on the wall for the last 4 years because I know he'll flock to play with LeBron, and LeBron will gladly accept him no matter where he at. But I want to move on to some news that broke out the desert this weekend. Monty Williams fired by the Suns after 4 seasons. He had 3 years and more than $20 million left on his deal. He's expected to become a heavily targeted coaching candidate in coaching searches around the league, ranging from Toronto, Milwaukee, and Detroit. He posted a 194 and 115 record during the regular season. Over the course of his 4 years with the Suns, include the 27 and 19 record in the postseason during his time in the Valley. This was a dude, man, who won the Coach of the Year award last year. Guided the Suns to a franchise best 64 wins following their first trip to the NBA Finals since '93. What are your thoughts on the recent firing on Monty Williams in Phoenix?
2 things. One, the Bucks firing of Budenholzer set the precedence of of a championship standard and where they're going. Because similarly to Budenholzer, after they played each other in the championship, they both failed to get back to the Western Conference Finals in back-to-back years. So if Budenholzer got fired for that, unfortunately, the precedent was already set for Monty Williams to get fired too. But what I really think, though, this is Matt Ishbia being Matt Ishbia. I'm cementing my legacy now. I just got here, and before I even got here, I already told you go get KD, and you got KD for me. Now I want to put him with the coach I feel is best for him. Because I didn't hire Monty Williams. Let me hire my guy. And I think that's what you're seeing. Now you're seeing the Matt Ishbia era fully being implemented. He's starting fresh. And good move, bad move, I don't know. You can argue that, but I think this is his way of saying, yep, I'm here now. I've arrived. Now let me do what I want to do. It's time. And that's pretty much what led to Monty Williams being let go.
You took the words out of my mouth, bro. It's a new era. But my thoughts my instant thoughts was, man, you better get the right dude.
Yep.
Because I want to say something about Monty Williams real quick. And I don't want this to be lost on anybody who's a Suns fan or just an NBA fan. He took that franchise from the cellar back to the penthouse. He did. When he first came to Phoenix, people didn't think Devin Booker was a winning player.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't think that this team, in spite of the young talent that was being formed there, could find a way to get right. Once they went on that hot streak in the bubble, that's what helped get Chris Paul attention. And Chris Paul already had previous ties to Monty during his days with the New Orleans Hornets. And I know he saw that in OKC. It was looking at that situation, which was one that he didn't ask to be in. He was traded in, was like, if me and OKC can work something out, I'm going to find a way to get over there because these young boys can play. And within a year, they went from not even being in the playoffs in the finals. And they became a top-notch squad in the Western Conference. So I want to give kudos to Monty for actually putting that franchise back on the map, regardless of what Matt Ishbia wants to do moving forward. But yeah, that was my thoughts. And I see the partnership forming. This is a partnership between Matt Ishbia and Kevin Durant. I got my guy for the next 5 years. I know Devin Booker for the next 5 years. I got Kevin Durant for the next 3. We're going to do this our way. This is a Matt Ishbia and boardroom collaboration. You don't think Monty the guy? Okay. And then Isaiah Thomas being in his ear, serving as like a liaison or advisor next to Matt Ishbia. I had a feeling that's why these games in the playoffs were so big. And I kept telling my guy, I'm like, man, Monty better be careful. I kept saying, I was like, he better start playing some guys off the bench and stuff. I'm like, because he playing his stars too many minutes. I think that proved to be his doom. He was forced a bad hand. He didn't have Chris Paul or DeAndre Ayton in game 6 when they went out. But yeah, this is a Matt Ishbia move. But with that said, how attractive do you think this job is to prospective coaching candidates? Because as attractive as it looks, it's coming with championship or bust aspirations. And if you ain't ready to go, man, I don't think this job for you.
That's why you, like you said, you better get the right guy, which means you can't bring in a rookie coach. You better bring in a top-tier talented coach. Because this is the one thing that when you talk about Monty Williams, that completely gets overlooked. Every last one of those superstars was coached at some point by Monty Williams and Team USA. that would have been huge for guys that are going to be out in the market, like a James Harden, like a Kyrie Irving, players that may look at Phoenix and being like, "Oh, you willing to get rid of Chris Paul? I can come in and be this point guard over here. You might get rid of DeAndre Ayton for a good quality big man. Maybe if depending on the price is right, Chicago might be calling for a sign and trade with Vooch. Like there's some options that could work over there. And you got Kevin Durant and Devin Booker for the long term. I may want to go over there. And that was the key component that I mentioned in my recent article about Phoenix.
I saw that. Yeah, I'm glad you plugging that.
Because any guy, if they kept Monty Williams, the stakes would have risen that much more to get a Kyrie Irving or James Harden. And depending on who that coach is going to be now, that might be diminished. The person that will save them is obviously outside of Kevin Durant or Devin Booker is really James Jones. But James Jones has to have the power to do what he needs to do, which has been reported. That's pretty much gone now that Matt Ishbia is there. It's a Matt Ishbia show. And James Harden and James Jones is going along with the program. So if that really is true, that's leading to even more problems in Phoenix that they're going to have to resolve. And you're going to have to bring in someone that is stable enough to bring that sturdy presence. Because that could be a recipe for disaster.
It's funny you bring up James Jones. I'm glad we got into him because that was the report when Woj broke the news on Saturday night that Monty Williams had got fired by the Phoenix Suns. He said Ishbia made the decision to dismiss Williams shortly following Phoenix's Game 6 loss to the Denver Nuggets on Thursday night and had Suns GM James Jones call him on Saturday night to deliver the news. Yeah, that I could see that. Now, I still think James Jones is safe for now, but yeah, he's on watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like Stephen A. Smith said, General Hospital, he's under surveillance. We definitely gotta watch James Jones over there, and all eyes will be on him. I think this is an attractive job for a championship-proven coach, a coach that knows he's gonna get a star there. They're gonna go big game hunting. Ishbia gonna get somebody in there, and he gonna rely on Rich Kleiman and Kevin Durant and them guys at 35 Ventures to do their thing. He gonna let them do their thing. This is a partnership. This is a Matt Ishbia and Kevin Durant production. They're gonna find a way. I think KD is cool with just being the guy after getting his 2 championships. He just want to put his homies on and win with his homies. That's all he's been trying to do since he was in Brooklyn. So I'm curious to see. I think it's attractive, but it's gonna come with a lot of pressure because you following up a coach that really changed the culture over there, and a coach that I could guarantee you will more than likely end up with a head coaching job somewhere. And you may not know. He might be going to Milwaukee. You don't know. But who do you believe should be the top candidates for the job? I'll name one off the bat. He from Arizona. You just named him. He actually beat the Suns to capture Milwaukee's first championship in a half a century. Mike Budenholzer. I think that's the number one target that they're going after personally.
I can see that. If my real honest answer with that was I wish Ime could wait. I think
everybody do now. Everybody do. Everybody.
Yeah, because that's a prime opportunity right there. You would have had a nice whip over there. If you stuck up with Phoenix, you really would have got the job too. But I saw a report from Mark Stein that talked about a direction that Phoenix could be going that's similar to what the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets did when they got Jason Kidd to be the coach. What if Phoenix is going after Ty Lue? You mentioned how Ty Lue might be gone because of what's going on over there with the Clippers, and how he might just want to be out. Why not rejuvenate yourself by coaching Kevin Durant? Why not rejuvenate yourself by coaching a young Devin Booker? And don't get it started with getting Ty Lue over there. That could actually increase your odds of getting Kyrie Irving because they won a championship together. So he knows how to handle Kyrie. And James Jones is still the GM. James Jones was on that roster that won that championship with Kyrie, and Ty Lue was the head coach. I'm not against that. I'm really not. And I would not be surprised if that's the case. Especially if you look at potential, I'm pretty sure it will have to be a trade deal that will have to take place. But I would not be surprised if that happened. And that honestly could be ideal for Phoenix if their goal is to bring as much quality talent as possible to fill voids in areas that they are looking to potentially get rid of. And with that point guard position being so openly public now, where there's not a guarantee Chris Paul will be back, that honestly looks like a fill-in. You can write in Kyrie Irving right there. And Kevin Durant would want that and support that. Because they still reportedly want to play together. So I don't know. I think it just depends on where direction you want to go. But Ty Lue in Phoenix does not sound bad at all if they were to pull that off.
You know, Ty Lue live in Vegas. So if he was going to leave the Clippers, the Suns would make perfect sense for him to leave because he already live in Vegas. That ain't that far.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could definitely see that, but I don't know, especially with him being under contract still, and it's been reports about the Clippers wanting to sign him to an extension. I see they've been interviewing Kevin Young, the associate head coach to Monty Williams. He would be a first-time head coach in the league. He's had some other job opportunities too, but this would be a pressure-packed job for him. Although the guys in the locker room do know him, that could work to his advantage. We don't know. It's a lot of directions the Suns could go. But I thought Milwaukee was the hottest job in the league. Nah, it's Phoenix now. But I want to talk about this real quick before we move on and close up, talking about what to look forward to in these conference final series between the Heat and the Celtics and the Lakers and the Nuggets. And that's this head coaching stuff. Because since 2015, every head coach that's won the NBA championship, with the exception of Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors, has been fired. Like, has the recent pressure placed on these teams to win it all become too much? Because it was a time, man, where, you know, if you just had a run of success or a run of dominance like Jerry Sloan, rest in peace, had in Utah, you could stay at that job for about 15 plus years. Now, man, this economy is something else. Monty Williams was just talking about this in his closing interview in Phoenix. And what do you know? Next day, got the call.
It's definitely too much pressure on that position, especially now that we're in a player movement league where there's a lot more emphasis on the players than the coaches. Players have a lot of say-so in a lot of this too. And the players, in a lot of cases, get a lot more leeway, especially if they're helping with, giving input on decision-making and things of that sort, which is what people like LeBron and those guys have done. So I think that plays a huge role in this as well. But for sure, too much pressure. We are in an era because there's so much player movement, so much storylines of what could happen. And we are also in such a microwave society. We talk about a patience perspective. You don't have time to wait. You don't have time to wait. And your options are limited, especially if you are, in a lot of ways, like the league has panned out to be, more of a smaller market that's getting big market attention. That changes the dynamic in a lot of ways. You have to strike now because you never knew what it's like to actually be in those positions until recent. there's a lot of different factors that play a role into it, but the pressure, ideally, yeah, it's too much to a point where at this point I could see Mike Budenholzer getting fired. I didn't expect Monty Williams to be done. I did not expect that. And yeah, it's tough. It's really tough to kind of explain in a lot of this, but yeah, I do think that the pressure is too high because we're too impatient of a process anymore.
Oh, I'll be honest. I didn't expect Monty Williams to get fired at all. He had just signed off on an extension, albeit with previous ownership with Robert Sarver, less than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
He still had $20 million left on his contract for the next 3 years. They got to pay that out still. Like anytime you get fired and the owner like, hey, I'm willing to pay you out to let you go, man, you could tell he really wanted him out of there. Like, I want my guy. Like you said, I want my guy. And I'm trying to go all in and win this title. And that's why I said, man, like, I hope he get the right dude in there, because this coaching business, man, is something else. It's more turnover with these head coaches nowadays than some of these players.
Mm-hmm.
If you really think about it, the only 3 dudes in the league whose job is safe is Eric Spoelstra in Miami, Steve Kerr in San Antonio, at least, Golden State, excuse me, for now, and then Greg Popovich in San Antonio. Them the only 3 dudes whose jobs are safe. Everybody else is just pawns on the board. And I know more are coming, because let the Cleveland Cavaliers not take off next season.
Oh,
we
yeah.
Remember JB Bickerstaff on the hot seat, and he one of the top coaches in the league, at least to me, or has been the last 3 years, getting the most out of the talent that he's had. But man, it's something else. But I want to ask you real quick, what are the things that you're looking forward to watching out for in these conference final matchups between the Heat and the Celtics and the Lakers and Nuggets before we go?
I want to see the battle between, obviously, Jimmy Butler and Jaylen Brown. I think that's going to be an impressive matchup, especially since they both kind of have that same makeup of that dog mentality on both ends of the floor. We know what Jimmy can do, and Jaylen Brown has emerged to being that guy as a great sidekick to Jason Tatum. So, of course, I'm gonna watch that. But, excuse me, on the other side, Nuggets and Lakers, man, is AD going to be healthy enough to give the Lakers what they need? That's my biggest question mark. AD has to be a dominant AD for the Lakers to have a chance. And we saw how he played in the bubble against Denver. He was dominant. There was no answer for Jokic. Jokic could not stop him. He can have that same impact if he stays healthy. And will D'Angelo Russell, who I believe is the X factor of this thing, is he going to show up consistently? Because you're not just playing against any other guard. You're playing against Jamal Murray, who has shown since the bubble has a chance to be that dude. You need the reinforcements got to show up. And I want to see if they're going to do that when, as of late, not just Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. Those guys have been rolling, man. So that's what I'm gonna pay attention to the most between both of those series.
Man, you talk about, can AD be the AD from the bubble? Can he just be consistent night in, night out? That's been the $1 million question, as well as D'Lo. He is the X factor. I agree with you. In my opinion, the Lakers been the best team thus far in these playoffs when they clicking on all levels. But can they do it consistently? That's the $1 million question. I think if they can, they're gonna have the best chance out of anybody of winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy for the second time in the last 4 years out in Los Angeles. As far as Heat and Celtics, I just want to see if Jimmy Butler really gonna make his promises come true. He said last year when they lost to the Celtics in Game 7 in Miami, we'll be back. I thought he was crazy after the way the regular season looked. He looking like the smartest man in the room right now. I want to see, when the money on the line, is he really going to do what he didn't do last year? And that's hit them big shots. He hit some in that series. Don't get me wrong. Jimmy Butler was incredible. He just didn't hit the biggest one in Game 7 when they needed it, which was that game-winning 3. I just want to see how you gonna finish this one? Because Boston barely escaped last year against this Miami Heat team. And this team is a team that Miami knows well, because this is the third time in the last 4 seasons that these two are meeting up in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's what I want to see. But with that said, I want to thank everybody who took out the time to listen to this week's installment of Open Run. Please make sure to check out Josh Hicks' latest article over at warmedia.substack.com, talking about how Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant reunion could be the answer to making dreams come true in Phoenix, as well as checking out my man Saul Rodriguez, the producer behind the boards here at Open Run and on shows at War Media, on the latest edition of the At Bat podcast with Miles Porter, talking about Cubs and White Sox baseball, as well as all the hot action going on across the diamond in the MLB. For myself, Gabriel Wilkins, my co-host Josh Hicks, so long, everybody.